Jungkook, do you want me to carry you? He looked into the car where Ryan was still seated and asked with a smirk. Ryan was stunned by his offer. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and she got out of the car. Today they both got into an arranged marriage. After a long day and a quick, simple wedding ceremony, Jungkook and Ryan arrived at his mansion, the place where they will begin their life together. The evening had already set in and the night sky was already dark. He had agreed to this marriage because his father wanted it. Wine felt and thought this way, and he knew that Wine was a beautiful, young, and bold woman. Meanwhile, she had said yes to this marriage because of her father's wishes. Because she knew one day she had to marry, so why not him? He is handsome plus hot. She was a bit nervous as she walked inside the luxurious house, her steps courteous and careful. Jungkook opened the door with a casual attitude, his hands casually tucked in his pockets. As she followed him further into the house, he gestured towards a plush couch and said, Jungkook, you must be tired. Have a seat. She sank into the soft cushions, the weariness of the day catching up to her. Vian, you're right, she said, running a hand through her hair. It has been a long day. He took a seat on an armchair across from her, folding his arms. Jungkook, you look beautiful by the way, he said, his eye flickering over her figure. She felt a blush spreading across her cheek at his words, and she quickly looked away. Man, thank you, she said, her voice a little flustered. He chuckled softly at her reaction, leaning back in his armchair. Jungkook, you're not used to compliments, he teased. She shook her head, still refusing to meet his gaze. Why, not really, she admitted, fiddling with a loose strand of hair. Jungkook, why is that? He asked, his voice nonchalant. You are a beautiful woman. Surely you have had people compliment you before. She shrugged, still avoiding his eyes. When I just don't believe them, she muttered, feeling a little foolish. Jungkook, why is that? He pressed, pushing her for an answer. She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. When people are usually insincere, she said, a hint of bitterness in her voice. Jungkook, what's make you say that? He countered, his voice quiet. When people say things just to make you feel good, even if they don't mean it, she explained, her eyes finally meeting his. Jungkook, and you think I'm like that? He asked, his expression unreadable. She immediately shook her head. When no, I don't mean you, she clarified quickly. He moved closer to her, his eyes dark and intense, as he leaned in until his face was just inches away from hers. His voice was low and husky as he spoke, his words a promise and a challenge. Jungkook, give me a chance, he purred, and I will make you feel just how sincere I am. She could feel her face heating up at his words and his closeness, her heart hammering in her chest. As she swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. Without warning, he reached forward and grabbed her around the waist, lifting her up bridal style. She gasped, her body pressed against his. Vian, where are you taking me? She asked, her threatening to thump out of her chest. He smiled at her, his eyes dark and full of unspoken promises. Jungkook, we got married today, he said, his voice low and husky. Tonight is our first golden night. She felt a shiver run down her spine at his words. She knew this man is not good for her sanity. Man, I thought you were the cold, heartless business tycoon type, she said, her heart racing. He chuckled, amused by her observation. Jungkook, cold maybe, he admitted. Heartless, definitely not. She felt a little breathless at his confession. Man, then what kind of person are you? She asked, her eyes searching his. He smiled, his gaze locking with her. Jungkook, I'm just a man who knows what he wants, he said, his voice low and steady. Her heart was beating even faster now. Man, and what do you want? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes never left her as he replied, Jungkook, you, he said simply, a hint of possessiveness in his voice. She felt a flutter in her stomach at his answer. Why me? She repeated, her voice shaky. He walked into the room, still carrying her like a bride. He slowly set her down on the bed, her heart pounding in her chest. As he hovered over her, His voice low and intense. He revealed his secret. Jungkook. Yes, you. He said. You captured my heart the moment I saw you last year. I wanted to marry you as soon as possible, but you were studying. But now you are mine as my wife, my bride. She looked up at him, confusion etched on her face. When this was an arranged marriage, right? She asked quietly. He leaned closer, his lips mere inches from her earlobe, and whispered against her skin, Jungkook, but arranged by me, my darling. She gasped softly at his words, her heart fluttering in her chest. When you planned this, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nipped at her earlobe playfully, his breath hot against her skin. Jungkook, I did, he confirmed, his arm encircling her waist. Her breathing quickened as his arm encircled her waist. When? Why? She asked, her voice soft and a little fluttered. He chuckled softly against her neck, his lips trailing soft kisses along her skin. Jungkook, because I wanted you for myself, he murmured, his words a gentle confession. She could feel her heart racing in her chest at his words, his chest sending shivers down her spine. Why? But why not just date me? She asked, her voice shaky. His hand slipped beneath her gown and trailed up her back, his fingers tracing her skin. Jungkook, because I wanted you as mine before anyone else got a chance, he admitted, his voice low and possessive. She shivered at the feel of his hands on her skin, her heart pounding in her chest. Fine, but what if I don't feel the same way? She blurted out, her emotions getting the better of her. She pulled back slightly, his eyes locking with hers. Jungkook, you do feel the same way, he stated, his voice confident. I know you do, the way you react to my touches. She tried to deny his words, but deep down she knew he was right. When you can't just know that, she argued weakly. Jungkook, I know, darling, when you looked into my eyes on the altar, that's the same light in your eyes, the same spark I felt it when I saw you last year for the first time. Her heart skipped a beat as his words sank in. When you noticed that? She asked, a little embarrassed. He chuckled softly, his hand coming up to caress her cheek. Jungkook, how could I not notice? My eyes were on you the whole time, he teased. She blushed furiously, her cheeks turning pink as he teased her. When? Where is my fault? You're too handsome, she protested weakly, her voice a little frustrated, and that moment she stirred, her thoughts suddenly turning to a certain spot on his lips. He chuckled again, clearly enjoying her reaction. Jungkook, you like my mole, huh? He teased, his thumb gently tracing the spot under his lip. When she began, her words dying in her throat as she struggled to focus. It's cute. He grinned smugly, clearly enjoying her flustered state. Jungkook, cute, huh? He repeated, a hint of possessiveness in his voice. Jungkook, so we can transfer that moon to our baby. He paused, his hand still caressing her face. But first, she felt her heart skip a beat. He leaned in, closing the distance between them. Do you know what all marriage couples do on their first night? Her cheeks flushed, her mind instantly going to the wrong places. When no, she don't know how what to say. He's looking at her with those eyes which make her confused. Jungkook, we consummate the marriage, he said bluntly, his eyes locking with hers. When consume what? She stuttered, her mind unable to catch up with his words. When you are so pervert, I thought you were cold, she said slightly, hitting his chest with her fist. He chuckled at her reaction, his eyes gleaming. Jungkook, you have no idea how perverted I can be, he teased, catching her fist in his hand before she could hit his chest again. He looked at her intently, his voice serious. Jungkook, now for real, without any jokes, do you really want to start a new life with me, Jimin? Wan, I do, she admitted, her voice soft but honest. He smiled, his eyes filled with relief and happiness. Jungkook, that's all I needed to hear, he said, his hand cupping her cheek. His eyes were locked on hers for a moment before shifting to her lips. Jungkook, may I? He said, his voice low. She felt her heart skip a beat, her mind racing. When? Me you? What? she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His body just inches away from hers. Jungkook, may I taste your lips? He asked, his eyes still locked on hers. She smiled at his question, his words stirring up a flutter in her chest. He had kissed her on the forehead at the altar, a tender gesture that had lingered in her mind. Her hair fluttered as she nodded, signaling her agreement. When yes, she whispered. They looked into each other's eyes for a moment before their lips met, the kiss a perfect blend of tenderness and desire. He deepened the kiss, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her closer. She felt a shiver run down her spine, her heart racing at the feel of his body against her. He was perfect. She melted into the kiss, his arms wrapping around his neck.